White House considering cash payments to Central Americans to stem migration. I love that headline because the headline makes no sense. You should actually just say, White House considers giving cash to illegal immigrants, which will do nothing, and they'll come anyway, and then it'll cost even more money. That's a better headline. Here's the New York Post reports. They say the potential cash transfer program would be targeted at residents of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, which accounts for the overwhelming majority of migrants illegally crossing the border. Roberta Jacobson, the White House Southern Border Coordinator, told the outlet, "We're looking at all of the productive options to address both the economic reasons people may be migrating, as well as the protection and security reasons," Jacobson told the outlet in an interview. In March, nearly 170,000 migrants were picked up by U.S. Border Patrol agents at the southern border, a 70% increase from February. All right, you get the gist of the story? You ready for the big hammer drop? Who was it who said that they were planning on doing this? Why, it was, let me just read it. This is Roberta Jacobson, the White House's Southern Border Coordinator, telling the New York Post, "We're looking at all of the productive options to address both the economic reasons," and she's gone.
Oh.
White House Border Coordinator Roberta Jacobson resigns as Biden struggles to contain the historic surge in migrants. It's amazing because it looks like this story about her resignation came before the New York Post was able to publish the story where she said, "We're just going to pay these people." Look, America's awesome. Everybody wants to be here. I get it. I would love everyone to find the American dream. You got to do it the legal way. The law is set up not because we hate people, but it's because we want to make sure people don't wander through the desert and die. We want to make sure human traffickers aren't trafficking children. We want to make sure that guy with that little girl is actually related to that little girl. And you can't do it when people just pour across the border. So this is one of the most insane things I've ever heard. I don't know what you guys think. I think most people just, their jaws just dropped when it's like the U.S. will give money to these people to make them not come. They're going to come anyway.
It sounds like they're considering bribing foreign nationals to not commit a crime with our own tax money. It's insane to me. The consideration is absolutely insanity to me.
So you're more the libertarian, but I think, what did you say, little L or big L? Or?
Small L. It's guilt money. We know what this. It's guilt money first and foremost. My point of view is that the best immigrant wall of all is a lack of economic growth. Let's not forget that from 2009 to 2014, more people left the United States and crossed back over the southern border than came in. As long as the U.S. is awesome, people are going to come here. To me, that is a market phenomenon that they're trying to solve with central planning. Is it any surprise when you solve something with central planning that you have a crisis? What I would give if both sides acknowledge that there's a need for workers, and so let's legalize work in some way. It's never going to happen because both sides want to politicize this, and they will continue to do this. This will never be solved. It's like the people who say, let's have a flat or sales tax. Yeah, good luck. It's never going to happen. It's not in the incentive of Congress to simplify the tax code. They will never solve this with free markets.
But I guess one of the challenges is different sectors require workers. Not every single sector can have the same kind of labor done. So a lot of the people who would be coming from Central America, they're not going to be computer programmers or, solar panel engineers. They're probably going to be low-skill workers or laborers. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment in some way, but what if we legalized work? What if we said we're not going to discriminate based on you're coming from somewhere else? To some degree, people have to do low-value work once they're here because that's the easiest way to not be discovered. How many Cuban immigrants going back to the 1960s came here? They were educated but were busboys once they were in the United States. So once you legalize things, you'd get a greater disbursement of workers. I think you'd also get a lot more talented workers to come here because we know this well. If you're a foreign talent and come here to school, you can go to school here, but you can't necessarily stay here.
I'll tell you this. That sounds like a way better solution than just giving them money and hoping they don't come. Because I'm pretty sure if we give them money, they're going to come anyway. I don't think giving someone cash, there's no contract there. What is that?
Yeah, well, the coyotes will see that money and say, okay, here's the money that will help you get across the border. I think you can't, look, North Korea is a police state. but people still come in and out of North Korea. We think in a free country like this that we can keep them out, and it's always struck me as odd that people on my side say, well, we want limited government, but we also want strict border enforcement. Sorry, the two contradict. You cannot have a very strong border enforcement with guns and also have limited government. So to me, it's always been make a choice, and I would prefer that we have a market solution, but that is the idealist in me talking.
But I don't think you necessarily disagree with many of the conservatives or many even pro-borders libertarians. I think everybody agrees if we could find places for these people through a legal process, we could keep track, we could make sure people are succeeding. Well, that's great. The problem is they're wandering through the desert. They're coming with coyotes and smugglers. Kids are dying. And so it's basically chaos, right? I think it was Donald Trump who said something to the effect of, have everybody come, everybody, but they got to do it legally. That's kind of the idea. Maybe
it is, but if they had the same rules that when our ancestors got here, and they probably all got here at different times, most of us couldn't be here today. If the rules that prevail today prevailed 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, most of us wouldn't be here. And so, sure, I would love legal too, but when you make the legality of it so limited, is it any surprise that you get the most desperate people crossing through the desert and everything? If you had a legal process, again, a market-driven process, when you don't have central planning, I think what you'd find is you'd have people coming the normal way because there'd be an incentive to come the normal way. And you could have fewer guns at the border because if you say, we legalize the work process, there's demand for human capital here. The minute someone steps into the United States, they become exponentially productive by virtue of being in this country. If you legalize that, they're not going to sneak over, at which point you can have fewer government agents targeting the very few who don't announce themselves in the first place.
But do you think many of these workers displace entry-level workers, American citizens who are trying to enter the workforce?
No.
So one of the things, and good point. I'll follow up, but I want you to go more in depth. But I want to make one point because one of the things we've actually heard a lot. Millennials say that around 2008, when they're getting out of school and they're entering the workforce, the economy collapsed. All of a sudden now, Gen Xers are occupying these lower skilled jobs and they can't find work. I experienced this to a certain degree. I was trying to get a job as a dishwasher because I was desperate. And I come in and there's some, I'm in my late teens. I'm 20 or 21 years old. And there's a guy who's in his 30s in a suit with a briefcase trying to be a dishwasher for minimum wage. I couldn't get the job. It was impossible. So I ended up playing guitar in a subway. Now we're hearing from Gen Z where they're saying, you've got all the millennials now finally starting to, come into these positions and take these jobs. And we entered this broken system in shambles with an economic crisis in our youth and now an economic crisis with the pandemic. So you have a lot of young people who have repeatedly seen some kind of struggle in terms of getting work. Now you have an argument for many people of relaxing the borders, allowing more labor to come in to compete with people who have already had a hard go of it.
It's a fair argument, but I don't think we can have it both ways in this argument. We can't say that they're coming in and taking the jobs that no one else wants to do at the same time saying they're taking jobs from college-educated millennials.
But I'm not saying that. I'm saying I tried to be a dishwasher and I couldn't because the work was displaced. I mean, dishwasher, I wouldn't say it's a job no one wants to do. Donald Trump, during his presidency, there was a raid on several meat processing plants in, I can't remember what state, maybe Mississippi and Arkansas, maybe it was a couple states. And I think they deported about 700 people, and those jobs immediately got filled at a higher wage to American citizens. So there were several people who were interviewed. There was, this one dude said, they asked him, why are you coming to this job fair? And he goes, it pays better than McDonald's. And so these people came into these jobs, and then that opens up jobs in fast food for 16-year-olds who are entering the job market who need to work.
Should we abolish computers? Should we abolish the mobile phone? Should we abolish Wi-Fi? Should we abolish your website? Because I guarantee everything that I just said has displaced all sorts of people. Now, my answer to that would be that's called progress. Because the world before that was a much more brutal, cruel world for people. Look, we could abolish the tractor, the car, and the airplane right now, and we'd all have jobs. We would be desperately poor, but we would all have jobs. And so
true.
This notion that people somehow drive away jobs ignores that where are jobs the scarcest right now? Are they just abundant in Flint because no one's going there, or are they more abundant in San Jose where there are lots of people going?
Well,
Las Vegas, there's lots of work. And it's lots of people moving from places where there's not. It's work. People don't drive away work. What drives away work is a lack of investment. And so what attracts investment? Talent. So where the talented people go, there's always going to be abundant jobs. And so I think it's a mistake to look at work as a finite supply. It's rarely that.
I would add, too, I think one of the biggest problems we have in this country is cultural. A lot of the young people that I reference, because, we hear from young people saying, I wish I could work, but I can't. The economy, the immigration. Well, it's also true a lot of these younger people are really entitled. And they're told by their parents, you should be an astronaut instead of a plumber. Plumber is an extremely important job. I got to say, astronauts are incredibly important in a certain sense that, what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX is going to advance the human experience and human technology in amazing ways. But I'll tell you this, a plumber is more needed. You need a plumber.
Day to day, yeah.
Yeah, day to day. You need substantially more plumbers and electricians and carpenters than you need astronauts. But they're important. It's just, we got young people who are told, why should I do a trade? Why should I figure out how to build something? They want to be a rock star. They want to be a YouTuber.
Mm-hmm. Well, even like a successful YouTuber needs to understand tech. I mean, you would not be successful if you didn't understand cameras, microphones, programming. These are trades. Being able to work cameras, that's a trade, like a technology trade. In the industry, it'd be like in the union, as a tech.
I think you bring up a good point. I've heard similar points made, particularly from libertarians, and I think one of the big issues that I would agree with, we need people to just work. You don't need to work for someone else. You can work. Mm-hmm. You can literally wake up in the morning and be like, I found a piece of dirt on the ground and I'm going to shape it into a little man and sell it to somebody.
I
Make
agree
the value, sell the value.
That work is important, but I think the job economy is part of the Ponzi scheme of the Federal Reserve. Kind of their ethos is, I want everyone working. I want everyone to have a job. I want this guy to dig a hole, and then I want this guy to go fill the hole back up. And we'll pay them
like the
both.
Military.
Yeah, we'll pay them both with our money, so they'll keep borrowing our money at interest, so that they'll keep paying these people to be busy, and then they'll keep owing us interest. And then as long as they're busy, they're not going to realize that we're a parasite on the system, that we're sucking this interest off the top. And we're headed towards automation where we don't need to dig the holes. We're building machines to do that. So as the age of automation dawns, the job economy is gonna fade away, and it kind of has.
But in a beautiful way. Let's be clear that automation and robots are the greatest friend to the worker that the world has ever known, and nothing else comes close. Let's not forget that when you were born 175 years ago in the rich U.S., your choices were binary in life. You'll either be a farmer or something else related to farming. What changed that? Tractor, backhoe, fertilizer. The biggest robotic job destroyers in the history of the world. Did they put us into bread lines? No, they freed people to become astronauts, to create cars, to create computers, to become math teachers. Robots are going to take all that's awful out of work out of it, all the drudgery out of it, and allow specialization on a level that's going to lift people that for hundreds of years we might have thought stupid, who suddenly get to do something that uniquely elevates their intelligence. Work is endless. It's the kind of work that is not endless in a dynamic society.
And that's true. And the big problem we then face is cultural stagnation. People who want to be YouTubers or bloggers for BuzzFeed instead of people who want to explore and develop the new technology. Mm-hmm. So I was reading about the ancient Rome and Greece, the Mediterranean, and how the great philosophers came about and how math started to emerge. And it was because humans all of a sudden find themselves in this very beautiful climate. It's always warm. There's fruit. There's abundance. And so they had a lot of free time on their hands. Mm-hmm. Some people laid about and were lazy and gluttonous and pretty bad, and others found something to occupy their time. I think one of the problems we have is that there's a lot of people, when they enter this position where they lose their job, they complain to the government about it. What are you going to do? You have people on the left where they'll say something like, the government should just give me money. It's like, well, you're not doing anything anyway, I guess. But then you have on the right people saying we should regulate the industries, maybe bring these companies back, a lot of what Trump was doing. I actually would agree more with, creating incentives for companies to exist here. But outside of all of that, I think the big problem we have is absolutely cultural stagnation. Movies are just remakes, reboots, adaptations. Take an old comic, make a new version of it. We need new things. We need people to be pioneers. We need people to say, I'm going to go move to the middle of nowhere in Wyoming and build a city. Just, there's so much work to be done. You just got to do it. I guess the main issue, though, is people want to be rich. You're not going to be rich being a guy who starts a new city. You might have purpose.
Maybe.
And
maybe.
Like you were saying, 100 years ago, we were all poor. Or 200 years ago, we were all poor. Compared to today, you're rich. Like if you're sitting in your house and you have the heater running and you have running water that's clean and access to the internet, you're rich. You don't need billions and trillions to be rich these days. So you just, as long as the automation enables the technology to be awesome, you're rich. You did it.
And it does. You look, IBM comes out with the first mainframe computer in the 1960s, intensely slow, filled a room larger than this. If you wanted to own it, it was going to cost you well over $1 million. Nowadays, I have a supercomputer that fits in my pocket that I got for a few $100s that is exponentially faster and more capable right here. I can go on Amazon. We've got Alexa at home, and I've got access to billions worth of music every single day for $4.99 a month. We are billionaires in so many ways today because of the profit motive. And what's scary is to think in the future what we're going. You are producing a television show with 3 people here, and then a guest like me. That however many years ago, how much would it have cost to produce this? And you're doing this from a house in rural Maryland.
Yeah, easily
it's
80
staggering what's being created at microscopic levels of cost. And so when people are pessimistic and when they tell you they can't get a job, no. It's as Tim says, no, you're not happy with the jobs available that you can get. It's kind of like years ago I wrote an op-ed. Jennifer Aniston is unmarried by choice, not because she couldn't get married. There are hundreds of millions of men who would give anything to be married to Jennifer Aniston. What's available, she doesn't think is worthy. What's available in the U.S. for workers is not living up to the standards what you allude entitled kids.
Well, so this is, there is a challenge here, though. I often talk about how here in the U.S. we're all fairly rich, especially when you look at other countries and the per capita GDP. Yeah, the average American working at McDonald's substantially wealthier than the middle class Brazilian. I think their GDP a few years ago was like $8,000 a year. So even if you're working at McDonald's for only 40 hours a week, you're doing better. The issue is we have certain standards and costs of living. Rent might be a certain rate. So while there are some people who are, you can point out, we've got Alexa, we've got all this great technology. You can get anything you want basically shipped to your house. I got Japanese soda sent here. Japanese soda, it's crazy. It's a little marble and you slam it and then Japanese company. It's great. And it comes here to the middle of nowhere. However, we have access to a lot of these things, but rent is still really high. So you can't be, you can't just go and work that easily. I'll mention we need pioneers, right? Go and start a city, but you need some level of capital to do it. And if you lose your job because your factory goes to Mexico or China, you can't pay your rent or your mortgage anymore. And if you decide, okay, well then I'll just flip burgers, you still can't just pay your mortgage anymore. You're not going to be able to afford rent. So there's work to be done, but an individual can't just snap their fingers and decide to start working on something and cover their costs. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.